So, we've talked about food, we've talked about games, we've talked about weather. What else do we know about what might have been happening in the lives of the Wampanoag people in the year 1621? Well, let's talk about Chapter 11, Wampanoag. Now, I'm gonna be real with you guys for a hot second. There is no way to talk about Wampanoag culture that does begin with the caveat that there is no singular Wampanoag culture. The term Wampanoag itself means people of the dawn or people of the first light in their own language, and it's a broad term that encompasses many different tribes and nations throughout southern New England, basically Long Island all the way up through Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, and into Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts. In fact, when Massasoit reached out to the Pilgrims in 1620, he was unjust speaking for himself, but for at least 36 different chiefdoms and thousands of people. But since this is a story about Thanksgiving, that's the culture I'll be talking about today. The Wampanoag people were agriculturalists who grew corn, squash, and beans, supplemented by hunting and fishing. They lived in permanent villages and followed what we would call a seasonal round, spending summers along the coast, where they could gather shellfish and visit other Wampanoag bands, and then returning to their home villages in the fall to plant the Three Sisters. Religion was also a big part of life. Unlike the more animistic beliefs of the tribes to the north, the Wampanoag had a sky god named Kainakut, the Great Spirit, who was the supreme being above all. He created the world and everything in it, and kept track of human behavior. His wife, Tabu, or sometimes Ozimat, was the earth, who nurtured living things. Together they had 4 sons. Kichet, the eldest, was the sun. Pokan was the moon. Another son became the master of birds, teaching them to fly and speak. And lastly, one of the sons became the lord of the seas, given dominion over fish and whales. These 4 brothers were responsible for maintaining the world, keeping it in balance, and so they were often called upon in prayers and rituals. Additionally, every animal, tree, hill, and stream had a spirit in it, and some places were considered sacred. Dreams were important as well, and shamans, or medicine men, played an integral role in the community. They used herbalism, charms, and prayers to treat illnesses and injuries, and because of their ability to control the spiritual world, they held a great deal of power and influence. Finally, the Wampanoag believed in an afterlife. It was located in the west, across the great waters, and it was inhabited by the souls of those who had died. Those who died in infancy went straight there, as did those who died violent or unnatural deaths. The souls of the elderly who had lived good lives would journey to the west after their bodies had served them well for many winters. And now, dear viewer, I think it's time for us to get into the meat and potatoes of today's video. How might the Wampanoag people have viewed this event that we now call Thanksgiving? Now, I know you're thinking, didn't they hate the Pilgrims? Didn't they try to kill them? Yes, of course they did. And we'll get into that right after we talk about the fact that most likely they wouldn't have called this event Thanksgiving. Why? Because Thanksgiving wasn't a once-a-year celebration for the Wampanoag people. Instead, it was a general attitude of giving thanks, and they gave thanks every day, multiple times a day, for the sun, the moon, the earth, the water, the deer, the fish, the clams, the corn, the beans, the squash, the warm fire, full belly, everything. But there were also more formal occasions where giving thanks took place. When the seasons changed, for example, there were celebrations. Spring was a time for giving thanks for the return of the birds, and the blooming of the flowers, and the planting of the corn. Summer was a time for giving thanks for the bounty of the sea and the bounty of the land. And fall was a time for giving thanks for the harvest. These celebrations involved feasting, dancing, games, and ceremonies. There might have been a grand council where leaders from neighboring villages came together to smoke pipes and make treaties. There might have been contests like wrestling matches, running races, or shooting competitions. There might have been traditional foods like succotash and pumpkin and cranberry dishes. And of course, there would have been 3 sisters planted for the following spring, ensuring the continuation of the Wampanoag people. So if this 3-day feast with the Pilgrims happened in the midst of autumn, it would have fit right in with these other celebrations of the season. And that seems to be the way the Wampanoag viewed it, too. When Elder William Apes wrote his 1834 book, The Indian in America, he remembered these kinds of harvest celebrations. He said that in his youth, the natives about him celebrated the new year with a feast of venison, fish, corn, bread, and other good things. and spent 3 days in eating, drinking, and dancing. So we can assume that what we're remembering as Thanksgiving was just another celebration of the season. That being said, we also have to remember that this was a very difficult time for the Wampanoag. The previous summer, there had been a smallpox epidemic that killed hundreds of them. Their population wouldn't recover for decades. And here were these outsiders, the Pilgrims, who had brought the disease with them, taking up space on their land, trying to convert them to Christianity. And yet they still participated in this 3-day feast. So why? Well, there are two answers for that. The first is practicality. If the Wampanoag refused to participate in this feast, they would lose valuable trading partners. The Pilgrims, while not great farmers, were excellent woodsmen. They had axes that allowed them to fell trees much faster than the Wampanoag could. They also had metal tools that would help with planting and hunting, and they traded iron for the Wampanoag's stone tools, hoes, and arrowheads. And this trade was essential because of the depopulation from smallpox. There simply weren't enough people to go around to do all the necessary work. But beyond practicality, there was also ideology. The Wampanoag understood reciprocity and saw the value in helping others. They believed that if you gave something, you had to receive something in return. And what better way to establish a relationship with these strange newcomers than by participating in a ritual that both cultures valued? Giving thanks for the harvest was universal. And so by participating in this feast, the Wampanoag and the Pilgrims shared something in common. They even taught each other new foods and preparation methods. And for 3 days, at least, they had something to be thankful for. Sadly, these peaceful relations wouldn't last. The Pilgrims broke treaty after treaty. They encroached on Wampanoag lands. They stole their resources and refused to give anything in return. They enslaved and murdered them. They brought diseases that devastated their populations. And eventually they tried to force them off their lands altogether. But during those first 3 days in October of 1621, there was peace between them. And that's worth giving thanks for. Speaking of things that are worth giving thanks for, I'd like to take a moment to thank my supporters. Their generosity and love allow me to bring you guys these videos every week, and I really do appreciate it. And if you want to join their ranks, you can head on over to our support page and sign up today. Until next time, stay native.